This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, the key to deploying cutting-edge tech could be good old-fashioned trust.
You have to have thousands of hours of experience of utilizing these systems, trusting the system, knowing that when it tells me there's a target there, there's a target there. Knowing when it tells me this is the enemy target, it's actually the enemy target.
Colonel Kenneth Jones, U.S. Marine Corps, on Fed Gov Today in just a moment. Uniting program strategy, advanced technology, process, and execution for a more efficient government. That's Maximus. Every program, every service, every time. That's innovation forward. Learn more at maximus.com/federal. A programming note that FedGov Today TV debuts at a new time every Sunday morning. You can see the new show Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. on ABC 7 in Washington and on YouTube. The new show's on the American Forces Network several times throughout each weekend. If you record the show and watch it later, make sure you change the record time to 10 a.m. Sunday morning on ABC 7. If you missed the debut, you can watch on demand on the FedGov Today YouTube channel and at fedgovtoday.com. Operation Dynamis is the Marine Corps' project to bring data into what it calls single intuitive devices. Colonel Kenneth Jones, Director of Science and Technology at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, tells you about it on the new TV program Innovation in Government from West 2026. You can watch it on demand now at fedgovtoday.com and the FedGov Today YouTube channel. After our conversation at West for the TV show, I asked Colonel Jones more about moving data from sensor to shooter and the concepts behind autonomous vehicles. Colonel, thanks for continuing. I really appreciate it. Another thing we talked about before we started the cameras rolling was I have kind of an amateur's view about unmanned that I think is reinforced when I walk around a room like this, and I see a whole lot of UAVs that are designed to go to a target and destroy that target, and that's pretty much the end of it. You pointed out to me in a very gentle way, thank you for that, that they're also sensors, and they are also providing data that goes into that lake that we talked about in the television part of this conversation. And I want to know how that informs the way that you think about, number one, integrating that data into the data feed that goes from the sensors to the shooter, and also how you integrate that data collection effort, because I imagine that's a different track data collection-wise than fixed sensors or sensors on other types of vehicles and so on. Maybe not.
So I think the right word here is evolution.
Okay.
It's not an unmanned systems revolution. I'm sure to some folks it looks like we have jumped to the future. We have UAVs. Right now, what we are experimenting with in the Marine Corps are called first-person view drones. So a Marine has a headset on, it's seeing what the drone is seeing, it's flying to a target, it's looking for that target, and then it's prosecuting that target. That's effective right now. It's a good tool. It's shown to be effective in the Ukraine. What we want to be able to do is get to a point where I can control multiple systems on a tablet. Those systems are command and controlled and have visibility. So imagine if you had, the largest tablet or a large laptop. Maybe we had a huge screen in front of us. Each of those UAVs, as well as potentially USVs, because we're also looking at putting different weapon systems on USVs. I have visibility of that. I'm getting data to target. What I want to be able to do is highlight that UAV and tell that UAV to go to that target. Now, when we do that, sometimes we use the term automatic target recognition. Someone will say, I'm going to send that UAV to a target and it's going to shoot a truck. I'm an artilleryman by trade. I've ridden around in trucks and Humvees for my whole career. It concerns me when someone flippantly says, we're just going to fly it to that target and we're going to shoot a truck. Because what if nearby is my truck? And what if the AI has not matured enough yet? The AI guys, I've had them teach me some of the terminology they use in terms of automatic target recognition, and I may have it in the wrong order, so I apologize up front. But I believe it's detect, identify, and recognize, meaning I detected a truck. Great, I know there's a truck there. Is it my truck or the enemy's truck? I've identified. It looks like a truck with 6 wheels. It's carrying something in the back. I still don't know if it's my truck or the adversary's truck. And then recognize. Now it's got, if you understand, I'm sure, how AI works, you have to have thousands of images, various aspects of a target. Can it accurately, I want it to be high, 80, 90% identify an adversary truck. Now I trust that to task it. I highlight that system and I tell it to go prosecute that target, and it shoots that target, and it can actually recognize it is prosecuting the correct target. Now think about, there's some scary AI generated pictures we have of just thousands and thousands of drones. So I've got to ensure that my USVs, my UUVs, the underwater versions, the UGVs that I'm using that may have a machine gun mounted on it, may have a counter UAS system mounted on it, may have trucks that are moving around that are carrying supplies. I've got unmanned aerial vehicles of various sizes, various lethality. I've got to build a system that allows me, there's a term we use of one-to-one versus one-to-many. I want to be able to, where it's one-to-many from a tablet, being able to see the various systems, task the various systems, know what those systems are doing, what they're carrying. I mean, think about it right now, when you're in a cockpit of an aircraft, you have a system that tells you what's loaded on the aircraft. I need to be able to, from that tablet, from that laptop, know what's loaded on that UAV, what its range is. I think you alluded to that earlier. How far can it go? Mm-hmm. How much time does it have left? Those are a lot of things I'm asking the system to do. That's a lot of processing power. Mm-hmm. That's where we want to go. We want to get to where, instead of a Marine is losing situation awareness, there's a thing we say, cognitive load. If I put too much of a burden on the Marine, it's not good. We don't want to have cognitive load. Similarly, as we start to talk about CCAs, our collaborative combat aircraft, that's a lot to ask an aircraft, a pilot, to sit in a cockpit, to worry about those that he's in charge, his other aircraft, as well as unmanned aerial vehicles. So how do I get to a point where he's no longer having to concern himself about that, but the system is coordinating those unmanned aerial vehicles that maybe are a little bigger than your smaller ones right now that we're seeing? Most Americans are familiar with the DJI. They don't know some of the ones we're doing. We don't use DJIs for obvious reasons. They're made in China. We don't want those components or those aircraft. But so maybe a larger system is being tasked by someone that's not in that cockpit. And again, you have to have visibility of the entire battlefield. You're asking it to have visibility of in the future, thousands of systems, both manned and unmanned. And what we call that is orchestration. Mm-hmm. We want to be able to orchestrate the execution of various missions. So they're not all prosecuting that same target. These vehicles may be carrying logistics supplies to another unit. The unmanned surface vehicles may be escorting a manned surface vessel. We have aircraft doing a multiplicity of things. So we're asking for that system to do a lot. It's very complex. And we go back to what we talked about when we were on the television broadcast. How do I simplify that view mm-hmm. for that Marine, soldier, sailor, airman, space guardian? Yeah. I think I got that right. Yeah. So that they're able to, now they've grown up in a digital world. You and I grew up originally we sent letters to people and then we had Unix-based systems. They've grown up in this world, so it's a little more natural to them. It's a little easier for them to balance multiple tasks. But you want the AI, you want the system to do a number of those tasks so it simplifies what the soldier, sailor, airman, guardian is looking at, and then can intelligently utilize the systems he has access to that fall under his command, his responsibility.
You mentioned you used the term cognitive load.
Yes.
To refer to what you just described
mm-hmm.
there. Do you see any potential for expanding the capacity of Marines' cognitive load? Or is there a limit, maybe because of physiology or whatever other reasons? This is how much bandwidth we can expect the human to have.
Sure.
And so we have to tailor the amount of information that can go to each Marine to fit that bandwidth. And I know everybody's individually is different, but it's a limited range, I imagine.
You're not always going to have the Marine with maybe the greatest processing power. We need to be able to provide the tool that any Marine can use, any sailor can use, So what I would prefer to do, instead of training the Marine, we're going to train the Marine. We're going to train the Marine on how to use the tech. We're going to train the Marine on how not to get overloaded, to know which function he needs to monitor. I prefer to have, in this case, this would be an intelligent use of AI, is AI is doing some of those functions so I lessen the cognitive load. I'll give you another example of how we're doing this. We're looking at how can we utilize systems to start to autonomize some of the functions on an aircraft, autonomize some of the functions on a ship, eventually on a truck. Right now, a commercial aircraft, they touch the stick maybe 10% of the time from takeoff to landing. They're monitoring, like you see in Star Trek, right? even though it's in the future, they're still monitoring their systems. They're monitoring where they're going. It's similar with these systems. So they're monitoring it. But if I can autonomize some of the functions, I'm reducing that cognitive load on the individual. Maybe he doesn't have to worry about all the systems. I've got to monitor all this huge, set of indicators on a ship, because the AI is lessening that and it's giving him alerts when he needs to be concerned. Your truck right now, right? Your truck, you drive it around until something goes off, and now they've gotten so smart, it tells you exactly what it is. Your tires are deflating, whatever it is. It's a lot smarter. So we apply that same concept to what we're talking about right now, where the whoever's sitting behind the computer is alerted when there's an intervention point and when they need to take action on something. That requires trust in the system, trust that the AI is actually doing the things it says it's doing. You don't want to be sitting somewhere where you think that the system's working correctly, you're not getting the prompts, right? So you got to build that trust in the system.
So this final thought might be
Sure.
more philosophical than tactical.
Okay.
But what builds that trust? Is that something that has to do with something that you specifically do as a Marine, or does that have to do with a broader level of trust between a system and a human?
I think it's thousands of hours across the force of experience with this. I love to tell the story. I read David McCullough's book on the Wright brothers, and they talked about how they basically created trust in manned aviation. They would fly over the National Mall, hundreds, probably thousands of hours, and then they went and did it in Europe. They flew thousands of hours, and eventually went, okay, they've flown, there have been a few crashes, but they've proven that you can fly, and manned aviation is something that's the future. So I think you have to do the same thing. You have to have thousands of hours of experience of utilizing these systems, trusting the system, knowing that when it tells me there's a target there, there's a target there. Knowing when it tells me this is the enemy target, it's actually the enemy target. And that's across any kind of function, whether it's logistics. If the system's going to tell me, I need a widget, and then it delivers the widget and never actually used the widget, now I've lost trust in the system. But if it anticipates based on historical data, predictively tells me I'm going to need a widget, that widget shows up, and then all of a sudden I need that, like that starts to build confidence. That's thousands, I think, thousands of hours. I mean, it's a principle that we've heard amongst other things. You start to build trust in a system and you understand it works and you can trust it. I was part of an organization where we were looking at unmanned aerial systems when I was in a school. You start somewhere. I think unmanned delivery of logistics is probably where we start. And we fly thousands of hours carrying boxes. Maybe there's someone in the cockpit, I'm not sure. Thousands of hours carrying boxes. We try to say, hey, look, we have flown thousands of flights and none of these have crashed. Now we maybe gain the confidence to start putting individuals on there after proving through thousands of hours. We've built that trust. You start to trust the system. I don't think people realize actually how little that the commercial airliner pilot is doing in the cockpit. I actually was lucky enough to sit kind of far forward and actually saw him just kind of looking at dials. I've seen some of the experimentation going on with some organizations that are autonomizing helicopters and jets, and they're going slow, step by step, but they're looking at basically mounted tablets. They're doing a few functions, but they're pushing buttons to have the aircraft take off. They're pushing buttons to have the aircraft go left and right. And then they push a button and then the aircraft lands and you have that safety. I think what we're seeing, probably the best example I can think of is Waymo. I don't know if you've seen a Waymo yet. I was in Austin. I didn't expect to see hundreds of Waymos with not a single person in the vehicle. I thought for sure when I got in the Waymo, there'd be someone in the driver's seat making sure everything was safe. These things are driving around one of the busiest cities in America. I know there was an accident with a small child last week, and I don't want to lessen that, but you think about the thousands of hours they're logging in a busy city with the one that I'm aware of, the one accident, starts to build confidence. It becomes normal, people go, okay, it must be safe. I've rode in it. My aunt rode in one. My grandmother hopped in one. It showed up. It opened for me when I pushed the button. I hopped in it. It took me safely to the next destination. There's an example of thousands of hours of an unmanned system proving utility, and now they're going to expand out to other cities. At some point, we won't think about it. We'll just hop in the car, and it'll just be normal.
Colonel Kenneth Jones, Director of Science and Technology at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab at West 2026. You can read more on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Don't forget, Fed Gov Today TV debuts at a new time every Sunday morning. You can see the new show Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. on ABC7 in Washington and on YouTube. If you missed the debut, you can watch on demand on the Fed Gov Today YouTube channel and at fedgovtoday.com. The next Fed Gov Today podcast is coming Thursday. The Inspector General at the Department of Veterans Affairs has a warning on AI. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.